Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 72. We are racing towards the 100th episode. When we get to the 100th episode, I'm going to bring all 100 guests in one show. It's going to be exciting. So, we're almost there. We have an exciting guest today. Let me just show you the flyer. Raffi, he's a celebrity historian. He's number 72 and the 27th episode of season 4. We're almost wrapping up here. It's almost spring. Spring will be actually Friday. Can you believe it? And so let's go ahead and bring in our guest all the way in St. Louis, Missouri. Here is our guest. Let me see if I can get some applause. Raffi, welcome to the program.
Here I am. Thank you.
I want to get you some applause here. There we go. All right. You made it. You made it. Awesome. We had some tech issues, but that happens. How are you this morning? Or
I'm doing great. I'm
Uh,
doing great. I'm excited to be here. I'm always ready for a good show.
Amazing, amazing. I saw some of your appearances and all that, and so that's amazing. Maybe I'll show a clip from one of your appearances, and
Sure.
we'll get started. All right, perfect, perfect. All right. So first thing is, tell us your name and where are you from?
I'm Raffi Andonian. I grew up in Los Angeles. That's originally where I'm from. I moved around. I lived in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Georgia, and New Mexico, all in my adult life since after graduating high school in Los Angeles. And as you mentioned when we started, I currently live in St. Louis, Missouri.
Awesome. Also, so you're from LA and you moved, traveled many places around. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Where have been your favorites from all those places you lived?
They all have different flavors. I mean, one of my favorites would be Gettysburg, where I worked and lived. This big Civil War battlefield at Gettysburg is such an unusual place. It's always great to go kind of for a run in the morning on the battlefield, in addition to the actual tours that you lead. Santa Fe, New Mexico stands out as one of my favorites because of the beautiful scenery and the rich history and culture. And where I'm at here currently, St. Louis, Missouri, I think it's a very underrated city. It's architecturally beautiful and there's a lot of history and a lot of great cultural stuff to do here.
Amazing, amazing. All right, let's get to the first real question. Who was a mentor you looked up to when you grew up? Maybe it's one of your historical figures that you studied. Maybe it's a parent. Who would be your mentor as you grew up?
Yeah, I had a lot of mentors growing up. A couple of them that come to mind, mainly they came from history and from sports. So, for example, in sports, a guy like Shaquille O'Neal and Kevin Garnett were some of my sort of
Oh,
heroes growing up, and I drew a lot from. I love Kevin Garnett's intensity, and I love Shaquille O'Neal's kind of personality. He has a big personality. In historic figures, I had many. I had Thomas Jefferson was a big one for me because of his intellect and his ability to write. Frederick Douglass was another one because he was born a slave and he escaped slavery and he is master and command of the English language was better than I could ever imagine. Even after multiple graduate degrees, I thought that was inspiring. Abraham Lincoln was someone that was on my wall growing up as a kid as well. So those are some of my historical figure and mentors that I had that were really, important to me and that influenced the way I, viewed the world. And no surprise that I went into history, and I do still draw a lot from sports mentality as well. I played multiple sports growing up as well, just trying to emulate my heroes.
amazing. So a lot of them are basically you relate to them based on their personality, and so a lot of them sports figures. A lot that
Elements of their character and
yeah,
personality. That's right. You can draw
amazing.
upon, extraordinary elements in their personalities. Yep.
What did you play? Did you play any sports in high school or college?
I did. In high school, I played basketball and football. I played both sports. And then in separate leagues over time, I played a variety of things: tennis, swimming, and I played violin, which is not a sport, but it's extracurricular. But in high school and organized in the high school team, I played basketball and football.
Amazing, amazing. Didn't you also do something in music? You went to college, or you teach something in violin or something? I saw on your LinkedIn profile. Is that true? Or
I played violin growing up. I do not. I do not teach violin. I have done history pieces on music. I've gone. I'm a regular at operas and orchestras, but no, I do not teach it though.
okay, okay, that's it. That because that's another aspect of it. That's amazing.
It does. It does inspire. It does shape my perspective.
Yeah,
Having being a musician does shape my perspective. Absolutely.
awesome, awesome. Okay, let's continue here. Okay, what is the most enjoyable aspect of living in St. Louis? How long you've been there, first of all, in St. Louis?
I've been here a little more than 5 years.
5 years, and so I'm sure you grew. That's a good number. Is there something that you enjoy doing? Like, if let's say I go there tomorrow, I have like 2 friends there already, plus you. If I go there tomorrow, where would you take me?
You know, the first thing that jumps out that you would immediately notice that doesn't take a lot of digging is the architectural beauty. I think that was what got me the first time that I was here. And so that to me is very enjoyable. I would take you from neighborhood to neighborhood. So you see the different architecture and the different areas. They all have their distinct style. All of it is beautiful, established kind of red brick buildings that we're known for with different designs and architecture. I live in an old 1890s shoe warehouse myself in St. Louis downtown. So, you know, I enjoy that. I think that's probably my favorite aspect. It's always beautiful around you, whether you're in a park or walking down the street, there's always beautiful buildings in all the different neighborhoods is probably my favorite aspect. If I had to then have you explore a little bit, there's 2 things that jump out. The quality of museums. There are many museums here, and they're very high quality. I know, I come from the museum world. And the surprising array of different ethnic foods, because St. Louis for almost 200 years has seen, you know, waves of immigrants over and over across generations, and they all still have their influence in this city.
That's right. That's right. I know there's a lot of Balkan people, right? Bosnian people too in that city. Is that true? So
Yep.
that's amazing. So the 1890s, that's amazing. That city's pretty
My
old.
building is in the 1890s. Yeah, it's a
Wow.
9-story building, old shoe warehouse, a shoe company. It's really cool. 20-foot ceilings. Yeah.
Is there any unknown history about the city from any presidential service, any historical figure that people aren't aware of that might
From
that you
St.
know?
Louis?
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, there's so many. I mean, there's some that are, I mean, some famous ones are Ulysses Grant and you know, William Tecumseh Sherman. A lot of people are surprised to know that they spent a lot of time in St. Louis. That they can claim being from St. Louis, although they kind of moved around a little bit. Lesser known figures, I would say Scott Joplin is a good one. His home is still here in St. Louis. So you can go visit it if you were to come here. It's publicly open. Scott Joplin is known as the king of ragtime. And if you know the song "The Entertainer," you've probably heard it. You know, that is who created it. He's from here in St. Louis. He's known as the sort of predecessor to jazz. So jazz was kind of grew out of ragtime. He was classically trained. He was incorporating both sort of classically trained elements as well as African American musical traditions, and he kind of came up with this ragtime style. Later, jazz is kind of the heir to that. Here's a fun fact for you. And the bicentennial of the United States in 1976, the Pulitzer people were giving out special prizes, and they gave out one prize for the most impact on American music. They gave it to Scott Joplin.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome. Good to know.
He's from here in St. Louis. I'd say he's a lesser known historical figure, but huge impact.
Amazing. When did he pass away? Is he still around or?
No. He died in 19 maybe teens sometime. So he got the award posthumously in the 70s. He was big in the 1890s and early 1900s. So we're talking 120 years ago. And of course, no surprise, by the 1920s, once he's gone, after the influence of ragtime, jazz becomes a huge thing in the 1920s.
Amazing. That's awesome. Good to know. Let's continue here to the next question. Okay. How you establish yourself as a recognized celebrity historian, like that title. When did you get that title?
I said it on television, and TV has an impact that things stick. It's just kind of, you know, the celebrity maker.
Yeah.
And I had been on TV maybe about 30 times at that point.
Mhm.
And I had kind of heard something about Dr. Oz before he was a politician,
Oh.
as the celebrity doctor on TV. I thought, well, I go on TV doing history. So I thought, why don't I call myself a celebrity historian? I threw it out as a joke to a producer, kind of tongue in cheek. Producer made it to the host. The host said it on air. It caught fire. I then adapted it. Now I'm on TV. I've been on TV appearances more than 300 times, and that's how they love to refer to me because it makes sense. I have celebrityhistorian.com, and my usernames on Instagram and YouTube are celebrity historian, so must be me.
Yeah, exactly. When did you coin it? Like, how long ago was that?
I would say maybe 3-4 years, maybe 4 years ago. Let's say 4 years ago, something like that.
COVID drum. Were you doing this kind of appearances during COVID times too, 2020, or not?
COVID is when I started doing these kinds of appearances.
Oh,
So
okay.
my very first appearances on television were strictly on Zoom.
Yeah.
And COVID was when I started doing television. And of course, I've done history since I was 19 years old, long before COVID. But on television, I started doing it during COVID.
Got you. Amazing. All right, let's continue here. Okay, so I know that you have many talents, right? Economist, historian, violinist, all of these items here. What's the most surprising? Uh, what's the best one from all of those, basically? From what
Oh,
you
from the
all your roles
comparative.
that you've done. Yeah, you're a historian.
I
You've
would
been
say history is what is the glue for me, because every one of those things has a history. History is what I started, is my kind of foundational framework, because that's what makes me ask the questions of how and why things are the way around me in the world, in society, in our interactions, in many different in institutions, social norms, social roles. History is the glue. Everything has a history, from peanut butter and ice cream to race relations and political voting, for example. Like heavy topics and light topics, and there's usually kind of a social belief system behind it. I would say that these other things that you listed, for example, economics, which is also a passion of mine. History and economics, kind of my favorite topics, probably of the bunch, is that economics is a lens through which I can analyze some of the things around me. History helps me ask the questions. Economics is a lens that helps me analyze things. It's not the only lens. There's many lenses out there, but it is the lens I particularly like, because believe it or not, I like mathematics too. A lot of history people are kind of more literary people, which I can be that, but I like mathematics and technical things as well. So that's kind of what draws me to economics. So I think one of my strong strengths, speaking of strength, is being able to combine the two and have kind of both sides, the creative side and the sort of technical analytical side, which often leads to kind of these new innovations, if you will, because you're thinking across disciplines instead of within the boundaries of one discipline.
I mean, yeah, I'm kind of like that. I'm a math person, but I also like history. So I like to, if I hear
Yeah,
about something, I'll pick it up, I read it,
yeah,
Wikipedia, whatever, and I want to see what the
yeah.
history about it, what the
I,
back. I mean, there's all these shows like the history of Coca-Cola. I'm not. I think it's
that's
on the.
right.
What's the channel? I forgot the channel. Maybe the History Channel. It's
Maybe,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Like the product
And
of how.
it's
Yeah.
that's right. And honestly, it's kind of like it's important because you understand both the qualitative and quantitative. Because I think sometimes we kind of fixate on one or the other, and reality is a big complex thing, and real life doesn't stick to one type of analysis or lens in life. And so qualitative and quantitative skills together can be very helpful to see a fuller picture.
Amazing. I love that. Anything else you would like to say about all of these your roles you've done?
No, I don't think so. I think that's how I would think about it. Is the combination is a big deal. I mean, I'll say one thing, since you mentioned the
Yeah.
violinist. The music part to me helps me understand how to pull pieces together. When you think of an orchestra, it's all these different parts that come together as a whole, and the sum is greater, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's how I like to think of how I put pieces together. And so to me, the orchestra, that's why I have a company called Orchestrate Business. It's how we orchestrate the piece together. That's how music kind of helps me visualize things. I go to operas and symphonies many times. I often analyze them technically because I have the technical training in music. So I think that does, anything you do is going to train your mind to infuse and affect and influence how you do something else.
Amazing. I would like to say hello, shout out to Charles, who's been on the show. Was 65 or something like that. Greetings from Hong Kong, Raffi, who would
All
have
right.
on the show. Do you know him?
I love it. International. I love it.
He's a good friend. He's in Hong Kong, so awesome.
Good.
Okay, you made 300 plus TV appearances. What's the most wildest and funniest moment on live TV that happened to you? I'm sure we've had those moments. You can probably talk for an hour about this.
I know. So the funniest moment, I think the funniest moment has to be, let's see. I did a few times a 4th of July segment on called "Are You Following George Washington's Rules for Civility on the 4th of July?" And we did this thing where we took George Washington's rules of civility. He had 110 or so of them, and applied it to how you should have hot dogs and beer over the weekend. Can you follow George Washington's rules of civility? And then we demonstrated it, had a beer and a hot dog on air, and the host joined in, started having drink and beer with me. And then we had our mouths full and had our faces stuffed, and we couldn't talk. And we're trying to talk on live TV. It just led to a lot of humor trying to figure out how to talk, especially while you're violating George Washington's rules of civility in doing so. Because one of the things he says is that you shouldn't be talking with your mouth full. So there we were on live TV, immediately violating it. The whole scene, just how it played out, turned out to be really funny.
That reminds me, did George Washington actually have wooden teeth? He probably didn't, right?
No, a little bit of myth, but he had bad teeth. He had bad teeth.
Okay, perfect. I think I had that on the quiz show. I remember asking that.
Here's another good one for you on George Washington. He never actually wore a wig. That's kind of
Oh,
a myth.
interesting. So that was his
Yeah,
real hair.
that's his real hair. But in the photo, the white hair, he powdered it.
Oh,
And
okay.
he powdered it because it was formal. It's like wearing a tuxedo. You would powder your hair for a formal portrait, but you're not going to powder it like just to walk down the street, go do errands. So he didn't look like that all the time, but
Yeah.
he did look like that for a formal portrait. The same way if you go out to prom or a black tie dinner, you're going to take a different portrait than if you just take a selfie.
Oh, got you, got you. That's amazing, awesome. I mean, yeah, I've always seen them. Has there ever actually been a movie about George Washington? I never remember seeing him. There was 1776, the movie, right? But there
Right.
was,
There are movies about the era. I'm not sure there's a movie that's like on George Washington. I
yeah,
can't think
yeah,
of one. I'm sure it exists somewhere, but I just don't know it.
yeah, exactly. Okay, let me go. Okay, someone you studied that people are misinformed about. I didn't know you mentioned George Washington, but is there a particular
Oh
celebrity?
yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that. That people are misinformed about. Let's see. I think someone. So meaning that people are kind of misunderstand the person.
Correct.
Let's see. What would make sense for that? Misinformed. Um, how about let's see. How about Martin Luther King? I would say that's a big one, but I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding about him because he's so politicized. I think kind of you have both left and right that try to kind of claim him as their own.
Uh
And the
huh.
reality is that he doesn't fit into either one of our kind of current paradigms. So I would say Martin Luther King is someone that people are misinformed about because there is this sort of notion of, if you ask today, what did Martin Luther King stand for? You hear these vague notions of freedom or equality. But what does that actually mean? And what's the context in which he was doing it? I think we'd be really surprised at at two things. One, the society that he was trying to change. It was much harsher than we imagined. Number two, the fact that he was actually disliked in the 1960s. A lot of public surveys at the time had him at, let's say, if in today's language, at a disapproval. If you're talking about approval, disapproval,
Uh
they
huh.
didn't like him. So today we kind of glorify and say that he was this, as if he was a saint back then. Which, I mean, I love the guy. I worked at the Martin Luther King childhood home. I know him very well in terms of the history, and worked at the house where he grew up in Atlanta. I used to work there and give tours. But I think we're very misinformed because we project backwards and think that he must have been popular back in the day and he was this huge hero. And at the time, there are polls toward the end of his life that show more than 60% of Americans did not like Martin Luther King. And I
Oh
think we would
wow.
be surprised at that. And so you have to ask the question why and what he was up against. And so I think that is a huge thing that we're misinformed about a very popular figure. And if you look more closely at his childhood in segregated Atlanta in the 1930s, and later at the Montgomery bus boycotts that he helps lead, of course, after Rosa Parks does what she does in the 1950s, and then he becomes a national figure through that. And the popular opinion of him in the 1960s, I think we'd find some surprises about A, the world around him, and two, how he was received. And he definitely does not fit into a left-right paradigm today. We just have to learn to accept history at its own terms in its own context, rather than trying to squeeze it into what political point we want to validate today.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. And so, I mean, to think about it, at that time in the 60s, right? That's when he was really, we also had the presidency, like JFK too. So, how did they compare in terms of disapproval, right? I mean, maybe he's a different, maybe, I don't know if you studied this, but did they disapprove MLK more than JFK? That's the
I would
interesting.
I would say yes. I would say MLK was
Oh, wow.
absolutely more disapproved. Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, got you. Okay. All right, perfect. Okay, I'm gonna take a short break here, a
Sure.
made AI clip, and then we'll be back shortly. I appreciate you being here. We have Raffi, number 72, amazing guest. We have a couple more questions and a big surprise coming up soon.
Do we truly understand who they really are? Beyond the surface of the human face, real stories capture human moments. A challenging journey into the unknown. We will be back shortly, so please wait.
Carl, you're on.
Well, howdy, Raffi. How are you doing?
Hey, Carl.
Yeah, I decided to follow the lead of some of the more nefarious people here on the planet, and I have now hijacked this show so I can talk about myself. And I'm so happy to have you on as my new surprise guest as we go forward.
Please do that. Please do that, Carl. I'll be back.
So, um, howdy to the world. I'm Carl Dakin. I work with Raffi right now, where we're advancing a new project to simulate historical figures. And we are taking technology, as Raffi referred to earlier in the show, and we're going to take it somewhere it hasn't been before, which is trying to create an actual, as realistic as possible, simulation of a historic character so that when you can have a conversation with them, it's just like sitting across from the table. And knowing that Raffi is into historical characters, I decided maybe I would start with Raffi as my first historical character. And but there are limitations on technology. They didn't understand what a bow tie was, so I had to use a regular tie. Uh, but yeah, the we've been having all kinds of interest talking with people about what would it be like to go back in history, to step into a time machine and talk to a person who is somebody that we admire, or somebody who has had great impact on where we are today. So Rafi, you talked about some of your favorite historic characters. If you were to sit down with George Washington today, what would you want to ask him?
Well, I would ask him about leadership. I think his big strength for George Washington was his leadership skills, his ability to keep a group together, if you will. Of course, he showed that in that revolution before he was president, before anyone knew he would become president. He showed that as the commander of the military and keeping his men together, despite losing a majority of his battles. Think about that. Think about think about, for example, in sports, if a coach loses more games than they win, they lose their team. In George Washington's case, lost more battles than they won, but he kept the army together. And let's not forget, later on, when veterans are not getting paid, there's something called the Newburgh conspiracy. You can look it up. When there's military leaders and soldiers that are getting ready to do basically a military takeover of the government, is what they want to do, because they're unhappy about their pay. And George Washington talks him out of it when he could have joined in and literally become king. He talks him out of it in a very emotional address and cools that down and saves the republic. This is all long before he's president. Those kinds of leadership skills, and later when the revolution was over, voluntarily submitting his commission to Congress, saying, I'm not in the military anymore, so we're subservient to the civilian authority as opposed to military being above the civilian. All of those things are why when we got the Constitution in the late 1780s, he was clearly going to be the first president, because he understood that. That's leadership skill right there. He's not particularly intellectual. Not that he's stupid. He's just not a particularly intellectual guy. He's not an orator. He's not a writer. He is an incredible leader that had incredible character. Those are the questions I would want to ask him about issues today, seeing how he would approach them, certainly in a divisive time.
Well, great. As we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, it's great to see so many people, so much media, so much attention being drawn to the founders of the United States, and asking the question, what were they thinking when they went down this path? So happy to have you as a guest on Omar's show, and I'm going to hand the reins back over to Omar, since it's technically his show.
What a great surprise there, Carl.
Thank you, Carl. We got to put a song there. Actually, we're going to be doing another Zoompardy, right? Maybe Raffi can be contestant, right, that we talked about. Hopefully sometime in the springtime, me and you. So appreciate you joining in and barging my show. I hope to barge your show one day too. Appreciate you. Stick around if you feel like it. We have a couple more questions here. And okay, here's a good one. Okay, if you were to appear in a movie, what would the story focus on and the theme? And what would you play? basically, Raffi?
Me? If I
Yes.
this is not Carl.
For you, and then Carl can answer it if he wants to. He doesn't have to.
If I were in a movie, it depends on the kind of movie, I guess. If it was an action movie, I think I'd want to be the outlaw.
Alpha.
I always loved westerns and outlaws. One of my favorite films is Tombstone, and I just loved sort of the dynamic there. I think it's fun. If it was kind of a sports movie, Ali is one of my favorites. I love the sort of overcoming and challenge, you know. So I'd probably be the boxer. I think secretly I wish I was a boxer. I just love the sort of heart that is shown in boxing, as well as the strategy behind it. It's kind of, as one boxer put it, is chess on a man's body. So there's some movies that come to mind. It's funny enough, it may not be a history movie. It's kind of more these movies that pull out certain elements that I enjoy, watching, and elements of my personality. I like to think that sometimes I would break rules in for a good cause, which is how I see the outlaw part. It's assuming that they're doing good things, and or the story of overcoming, films like Ali, or even a film like Walk the Line. I love the journey of Johnny Cash, the way that they portray it, which is very human, with a lot of failures and overcoming, rather than this sort of mythology of nothing but positivity.
Amazing. So what would we play? What would Carl play in that movie, and what would I play in that movie? Let's say we did a Western movie.
Okay, the Western. I feel like Carl would be the law enforcement guy who's going to enforce things. That's how I see Carl, because of the fact that I don't know, he just kind of knows a lot of technical things and knows how to do things kind of very, very, very kind of cleanly. And you, I would say, maybe you're the kind of funny drunk at the bar, because you have a good personality and you're kind of fun. So you're at the bar and he's the guy who has a drink with everybody, that comes in a Western saloon.
Why not? Do you approve, Carl? Do you approve?
Yeah, I do. I was just asking myself though, in the wrong page here. So let me come back. I was asking myself, what would Doc Holliday look like with a pink bow tie? So, so I just reached out to Nano Banana to have it generate a brand new image, and it's pretty interesting, because he's in a daguerreotype thing and browns and dark colors with a very bright pink bow tie. So.
I actually have a bow tie, but it's like a rainbow color, so I forgot to wear that one. But maybe next time, maybe for the 100th episode. So we'll see that. But by the way, Raffi, Carl has been on the show before. We did an
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, we did one online. So that okay, we're almost done. A couple more questions here. Okay, I asked all 72 people before you, 71 people, if I were to create a product or a concept to benefit humanity, what would it be? And maybe it has to do with your historian background. What would you say?
Is this something that is, if I wave a magic wand, or is it something that has to be feasible?
Yes, you can. If you want, you can do that also.
it would be to ask questions before we conclude. If I could somehow get in someone's mind to have them inquire before they jump to a conclusion, I think that's what it would be, because I think that leads to a lot of misunderstandings in both personal relationships as well as societal relationships, and not understanding each other and where each other is coming from. And I think that makes it very challenging. And so I think we would have a lot more tolerant world if we were able to do that, as well as stronger personal relationships in our life. I think, as well as intellectual matters, for example, we were talking about Martin Luther King earlier, instead of accepting sort of the story that we tell about him today, if you ask the question of, I wonder what it was like back when he was actually alive, you would end up with a whole different answer than what we are assuming is true today with the mythology. So to me, it starts with asking questions. And so if I had a sort of magic product, it would be to kind of calibrate someone's brain to ask a question before they actually already have a conclusion, because I think that really would lead to a lot more intellectual curiosity, as well as emotional, better well-being, as well as social understanding of each other.
Amazing. And then just tell us about yourself. Who is Raffi? Who's Raffi all about? And then I would like to show people a clip from one of the shows I saw. Let's show that real quick. It's the one when you were talking about the shaving cream and all that with the barber.
Sure.
Remember that?
If that's what you like, go
Show
ahead.
people a clip of that one,
Sure.
and then we'll talk about
Or bronze that might use it, like, or even clamshells if you go even before then, to be able to shave. Not a very a safe experience. What happens though is technology changes everything. So for example, Gillette, you know what his first name was? King Gillette.
Really?
King was his first name. Yeah, so he's not actually a king, but that was his first name. And in the late 1890s and into the early 1900s, he creates a technology to be able to have a disposable razor. And that changes everything, because now you're buying these razors a bunch of times, the replacements a bunch of times, the proprietary stuff. You're buying a horsehair brush because originally you were taking soap and you're going to go like this to use the lather. But then you get some better stuff, including the first shaving cream. Barbasol in 1919 came up with the first shaving cream, and that made it so that you could have a smoother, less irritated shave. He was a chemist, believe it or not. The guy who started Barbasol. Barbasol, by the way, barb, beard, that's what it's coming from. That's what you're using the term for.
Amazing. All right. How do you remember all this terminology and stuff? I mean, that's amazing clip there, all these stuff, and the mustache. How do you?
I know. So do I? It takes, for one, you have years of a base of knowledge and framework from which you kind of build on and go into, know where to go and look for details. That's how I do it. And of course, I study before I go on so that the things are fresh on my mind, so I'm not having to think about it too much. And I'm just very specific in my memory. I've always had a very specific memory, but I am preparing before I go on so that the specific things I want to say, like the guy's first name being King, for example, is top of mind for me. Now, as far as a beard, what I'm doing there is I'm using a prop or an artifact to be able to connect something tangible in front of you to visually connect to an intangible concept. That helps people remember and learn better. I learned that in historical interpretation, where, for example, if you're on the battlefield, you're going to be connecting the tangible, which is the battlefield or whatever is in front of you, to an intangible concept that people cannot otherwise visualize. So that helps create a fuller experience. And since we're on a visual medium with television, I make sure that I use a visual element. If we were in person and I'm doing a speech, I go one step further and I circulate things. And this way you have the tactile element as well. So whatever forum I'm in, I try to use the benefits of that forum, the unique aspects of that forum, to be able to enhance the experience, to help connect the concepts to actual tangible memories.
Amazing. Perfect. Any closing thoughts? Thank you for being here. Tell us about yourself. Tell us something people don't know. Your key takeaway, basically.
It's something people don't know. Something people don't know about me is probably, let's see, it would be, we already talked about the economics part. People kind of don't know that a lot about me. If you want a key takeaway from me, I think it would be seeing things around you with complexity. I think is a very important thing. I think it is most things in front of you are not simple, cut and dry. I like to see complexity. I know Carl knows this. He's done one of my online courses that I used to do in the past, and I'm always trying to see issues with multiple angles. And I don't mean just like big, huge political issues, but just kind of social things around you. I think that would be the big key. So maybe something to know about me that people don't know if you haven't met me is if you have a beer with me and we have a drink, I'm going to be often playing devil's advocate and arguing a different side, whether I believe it or not, because I really want to be rigorous, the Socratic method, in arriving where we are. And I'm okay with a conclusion that is not an entrenched conclusion. That's kind of, the best answer we have right now, but open to adjusting in the future as I learn more.
Amazing. Carl, any closing thoughts for our guest, Raffi, and your good friend? Tell us something you knew about him, something that changed about your perspective about Raffi. Tell us a little bit about how you met him and all that for like a few minutes.
Yeah, when Raffi was living in New Mexico, he was a member of a group down there that was dealing with alternative funding, which is where you go when all the regular sources don't show up to write you a check. And we got to meet, and we could just struck it, immediately that we had some common interests. So he invited me to go to coffee almost immediately, and I was able to slide it into my schedule. We had a real good morning chat over coffee before I had to go back to Denver.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you again, both of you guys, for joining on the surprise episode number 72. Thank you, Raffi, and thank you, Carl. I'm going to play the outro. This is your chance to say any last-minute words. You're good? Okay.
We are good. Thank you.
I'll play the outro, and we'll be back with you shortly. Just stay in the back room there.